Good morning, outlets. It is, as always, J.A. George here at Shameless Plugs with my co-host.
Samantha the Writer!
Wow, that was...
Enthusiastic.
That's exactly the word I was going to use. More enthusiastic than usual.
Sorry. I'm really excited.
Well, it's an exciting episode.
It is an exciting episode. And as always, we got to do our quick weather report.
Oh,
and this morning,
we haven't done one the last few episodes.
No, we haven't. And this morning, I would like to comment on one thing. Here in Cincinnati, it is probably, I don't know, you came over here this morning. It's like, what, 70 outside?
Yeah, it's 70 and kind of muggy
already.
Okay,
so J.A. has on shorts and a t-shirt because he's dressed for the weather. Mm-hmm. I have on fuzzy socks, a pair of jeans, a tank top, and a sweatshirt. So...
Yes.
That is how the weather in Cincinnati is going.
You are dressed for your interpretation of the weather.
I am. So, when it is 70 and muggy, I still am dressed like it's fall.
Yes. Yes.
Which we're almost at, and I'm really excited.
I am really excited that it's almost fall as well. It's my favorite season. October is my favorite month. I know I've talked about that on the show before, so I will not bore you all with the details again, but we have another reason we are excited about today's episode.
We do.
We have a guest, and we love guest episodes. Because our guests are awesome. That's
why
we love them.
Yeah. Our guests are great. We might have the best guests ever.
We do. I mean, we're the best writers in the history of the known universe, so of course we have the best guest.
Right. Absolutely.
So, our guest today is author Ryen Lesli, who we are very excited to have on the air. Some dark things come out of Leslie, and I mean, Ryen Lesli, and I mean that in a very good way. So, good morning, Ryen. And actually, I have another reason I'm excited to have Ryen on the show. Because Ryen is another early bird.
Yes, right?
I see her on Twitter at like 5 a.m. and everything, and, you know, we've had conversations on there that early, and this is the first guest we've ever had where we get to record this early, which is really cool because we record like Saturday mornings at 7 a.m.
Yeah. Or earlier, depending on what's going on in the day. So.
Yeah, and today I got over to Samantha the Writer's house at 6:45, and Ryen called us promptly at 7 as planned. I mean, like right on the dot.
Yeah, it was great.
Which was really cool because, again, this is the first time we've ever gotten to do one this early. So,
yay!
It's the stupid, dorky little things, and now I will shut up so Ryen can actually say something, but thank you, Ryen, for coming on the show.
And good morning. Good morning. I've actually been up since 3:30, so I've been at it.
Nice.
Wow. Man.
She writes early.
You win.
I've seen her. Yes, you do win today. And it's a Sunday, no less.
Yeah,
it is a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And she's up at 3:30.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I didn't go to bed until, I went to bed pretty late last night, but I have a deadline coming up, so I woke up around, 3:20, and I couldn't go back to sleep, so I just got up and went back to the writing.
I completely understand. Mm-hmm. So, if we may ask, and, you can feel free to tell me to shut up, it's none of my business, but what is your deadline for? What are you working on right now?
It's my second book that's coming out in my series. It's due November 1st, and I've already done the first book, that comes out in February, but I was I work with Kyanite, and I was talking with Sophie, and she's like, hey, can you have that second book to me by November 1st? I was like, sure. And then I'm done. After I'm done talking, I'm like, oh my God, I am such an idiot. It's like half written. So I have been scrambling around trying to get this book written because, it's got to be done by the 1st. But it's been fun. It's been fun.
Nice. Nothing like deadlines as motivation.
Yeah.
So
it was surprising. It was, I was not expecting that, but I'm like, of course, sure, I'm a team player, whatever you want, got it. And then get off the phone, have like 8 mini panic attacks, and get back to it.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, in November, it's pretty far away still, so you're good. Like,
I mean, you've got a whole month.
Yeah, you got a month. That's cool. You get it done.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 49,000 words, and it's got to be 99,000 words. Okay. I mean, it's 10 books in the series, so I have, I know what I've got to write in each book, and some of the other books are actually already written, but it's got to be perfect. Like the first one's perfect, so it's got to be perfect, and I mean, it's sometimes the writing's not there. I don't know if you guys have that problem, but sometimes I just sit there and it doesn't happen, and I got to get up, and days go by, and then I'll have like this manic episodes where 3 days later, I come out of my office. I don't even know what day it is. Haven't showered.
Yes.
I drank more coffee than is, legal.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will have periods where it's like, oh my God, I'm so excited, I have to sit down and write it. Then you write and write and write, and it just flows out of you, and then I'll go 3 weeks without even sitting down at the computer. So completely get it.
Yeah, I do the
crazy.
exact same thing. And then when I get in those binge writing modes, it's the same thing for me. Like, I won't move. And then I suddenly, like, reappear. And my husband's like, oh, where have you been? I'm like, in the other room doing stuff. And he's like, that's cool. He's like, are you hungry? Do you want to take a shower? One of those two things seems important right now. Yes, I should do both.
So something you just said kind of, it really impressed me, but it also made me feel a little inadequate there, because as a plotter who has a 6-novel series that I am working through right now, you have 10 novels in your series. And it sounds like you've done a lot of work on them already. I'm rather impressed, and I'm feeling not quite so great about myself.
You've lost twice.
Well,
this
actually,
morning.
I have.
it was only going to be 5 books, but because my word count is so high, and you guys have talked about the word count on your show before, but I love to write, and so when I first tried to sell River, it was just 5 books. She was like 169,000 words.
Whoa,
Well,
wow.
you can't, as a new writer, that's not going to sell.
Right.
So
Right.
it all had to happen. So then I suddenly had a book between the first and second book, and
Gotcha.
this is the book I'm struggling with. I mean, I'm not struggling with it. I know it's going to happen, but I wasn't expecting it, because the third book was like, 240,000 words. So that's already 2 books.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, the next 2 books are the same thing. So this book wasn't supposed to happen. I'm glad it is,
Yeah.
because I can put all the stuff in there that I had to take out.
Right.
But so that's why it's so big. It keeps getting bigger.
But you got to resurrect your darlings. You
Yeah.
didn't have to just kill them.
Right,
You got to bring them back.
Exactly. And it's very exciting.
I was
Very
going to say, not many
exciting.
writers get that opportunity to bring the people back or bring the ideas back that they had to, sadly, off.
Yes.
It's a little overwhelming, actually. You're like, really? I can do that? You're okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go add all this stuff. If you're okay with it, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Nice. So you've mentioned the title already. Let's talk a little bit about River, your novel that comes out in February. Tell us about it. What would you want people to know about it? I know that pre-orders are available now, but what would you want people to know about it?
Well, most people know me by my poetry, right? So you would think that I would just write, adult, fantasy or whatever. I actually, before I started the series, I wrote, romance novels. That was kind of my, light erotica. That was my niche.
Yeah.
But this story came about in just the weirdest way, and it's a young adult about a girl who just thinks that, she's a little weird, like teenagers do. She can see the light around people, and obviously that's not normal. But she hasn't told anybody about it. It's just like, it's always there, like, you don't always see your nose or something, you don't notice your nose. So it's just something that she does. Plus, she feels really restless. She feels like she doesn't belong. But again, she just thinks she's weird. And then this new kid comes to town and kind of takes over her best friend, and everything just falls apart. Everything she thought was real wasn't. And it just is this crazy, she was taken from her first life and taken into the outside, which is the human world, and Georgia, and all of a sudden she's taken back out of it and put in this world. You know who Cardi B is? You guys know who Cardi B is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be like Cardi B going to Hogwarts, right? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So you have Hogwarts, and they're very innocent, kind of proper and very British, and then you've got Cardi B.
Yeah.
And it would be like her walking right into Hogwarts, and she's got the magic too, and they're like, why is she talking like that? What is she doing? We don't do that. So I took a teen out of Georgia in 2017, and I put her in a sort of live in the trees like Robin Hood, prepper, no technology, no electricity world. And so her reactions to it are quite hysterical, and she doesn't have her phone, by the way. This is like, and she didn't get to prepare for it, in 2 weeks we're going to go do this, live off the grid. No, it was just abrupt, and she's suddenly in this other world, no phone, she's used to being online and, posting, and all of a sudden she doesn't have that. And she's with these people, these other teenagers that don't cuss, There's no sex before marriage. There's nothing like that. And just her struggling to go back to this life that she was taken from because of this tragic event, and that's pretty much what it's about. There's obviously more to the story. There's this whole portent, and she has all this power, but because she lived as a human for 12 years, everything is all messed up now, and it's just her trying to relate to this way of life that is just so foreign to her, and she just doesn't understand it, and she doesn't understand the purpose of it. They're very simplistic, and they just enjoy sitting and talking to each other, and just like sitting down and talking to someone face to face. And she's like, if I had my phone, I could just text you.
Yeah.
You know how teenagers do? They just sit next to each other and text each other.
Right,
well, she's used to that, and she has to learn how to look someone in the eye and talk to them, or just kind of like random stuff. But then there's this whole other plot in it that goes through the whole series about, pretty much good versus evil, got to take down the bad girl at the very end. And it's just really funny because she's a human and she lived as a human, and the way they talk. And, I have teenagers. So, I'm around kids, and it talks like they do. This isn't her voice. This isn't my voice. It's not like my poetry. It's like a teenager, a millennial would talk. So it can be very blunt, very blunt.
Yes.
But yeah, in a nutshell, there it is.
Yeah. I remember actually seeing some of your tweets on where you were talking about some of the things that you mentioned there, like, the teenager without the phone and everything. And I remember thinking, I want to see that story. I wanted to read that story even from seeing your tweets, like in the different Twitter contests and everything like that. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I just thought about all the shocking things that would happen if I took my daughter, which is where it came from. My daughter hit high school, and her and I just started button heads. She was very sheltered with us, and she was suddenly getting exposed to things that, as a parent, you have no control over.
Right.
So, and she would have that phone, and I just pictured myself taking that phone and just tossing it, and us just going and living off the grid. So we could go back to, her name is Samantha, by the way. Go back to the sweet Samantha. That's a great name. Just going back to the sweet Samantha, as opposed to this hardened, sort of worldly teenager that she was. And the more we fought, the more I did all these horrible things to my character because, I wanted to see what my daughter would do if it happened.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great. Well, I think what's so interesting about your topic is that there is like a group of people who could pick up your novel that didn't grow up with cell phones and that didn't have that kind of contact and had to have the face-to-face conversations and grew up that way, that will find it just as fascinating as the teenager who it's going to terrify.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
I love being shocking like that.
Yeah.
So,
Because I think a lot of... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because I think a lot of teenagers are going to pick it up and they're going to like classify it as a horror movie.
Yeah,
like a horror novel.
Well, it's really funny, too. The first book is the sweetest, the nicest, the funniest. It's all, I make it all funny, but It's very realistic. You don't really get into the deeper stuff until like halfway through, and you start to realize that maybe this life isn't as simple as you thought it was. Maybe they're not as simple as you think they are, because, being a human in the outside, yes, you do have access to technology, and there's something new around every corner. It's always constantly moving, but then you go to this world that's sort of stagnant, and they don't like any change. They don't like any of the human ways, but they have power. So there's this other problem you have with that. There's bad things there that also have power. And it's not just, it'd be easy if it was just teenagers having to deal with regular stuff, but she suddenly has her power back, but she doesn't know how to use it. She doesn't know how to control it. And everybody else has power, and the bad people have power. And she's got to somehow figure out what she's supposed to do with it, because it's not like going to Hogwarts, right? There's no school teaching her how to use her power. It's just something that comes natural to her. It's supposed to come natural to her. She's supposed to know how to use it. And so it's just, she struggles with a lot of that about using her power. And also they're very it's not old fashioned. Another topic that had come up when I was writing the book was, when the sex talk comes, with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter and I had the sex talk, and I was sitting with her and one of her friends, and they were always very comfortable with me because they don't judge. I just sit there and keep my mouth shut, and I just let them talk. And her friend just wanted to get rid of the V card, right? And she just kept talking about it, and I just thought, that's so sad. That is so sad that that's all she was focused on.
Yeah.
So I've gone absolute opposite by that. They don't have sex before they're hand fasted. They barely kiss. They don't do anything. They do something called roaming, which is like walking. That's all they do. They don't even hold hands.
Wow.
So I made it into this sort of, it's more of a spiritual thing, and it's really, really, it's really cool that they fall in love and then they have that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the teenagers today are really going to, that's probably one things that they're not going to identify with, but I wanted to, I don't know, make it special or something. I don't know. That conversation we had was actually very sad for me, for her.
Right.
And all teenagers think that way. All her friends thought that way. They just want to do it just to get it over with. So they can just say they had done it. And so that actually opened up quite an avenue for my daughter and I talking about,
Oh, yeah.
with sex and stuff like that. So all the issues a teenager has to deal with, I touch on. I touch on gay, I touch on trans, through the whole series. I touch on all of it because I find it all fascinating.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, but I think that's the thing, though. If you're finding it fascinating and it's reflecting a reality that you're seeing through your daughter, it's going to resonate with other people because they're going to be able to see it and relate to it as well. I mean, I think that's what we need to do. You don't have to do that as a writer, but I think it certainly can inform the writing.
Yeah, it can be really powerful.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. It can bring a different element into your writing if it's something that you can do from a genuine place, and you can make it real, and you can make it, you can put someone and be like, yeah, I could be in that house having that conversation. I think that it is a really powerful tool as a writer.
I was about to say authentic. People can tell when things are authentic when they're based on something real. It comes through.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what world you're writing in.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Just because it's set with magic and fantasy and all that doesn't mean that it can't feel real.
Exactly. I think
that was the point. That was the point that I wanted to do is it's fantasy, but I wanted to make it so realistic that it could happen.
Right.
Like they live in Muir Woods in San Francisco, in California, right?
Right.
The Banyans where this story takes place is in Muir Woods. You can technically go to Muir Woods. You're going to have to look really hard to find them, but I wanted to make it realistic enough that you think, that could really happen.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And it is available for pre-order now.
Yeah.
Yes, it is on Kyanite, or you can go to my website,
Yes.
ryenlesli.com. You can pre-order it there. But I'm very excited.
We will have, by the way, everything linked from our site, from the YouTube page, and everything will be linked. So just visit us, shamelessplugspodcast.com. Links for everything will be there. So you mentioned that, you had done more poetry before. What was that shift like for you, going from the poetry to whether you want to talk about going to the light erotica or to the YA? What was that shift? What was the adjustment process like for you?
Well, the poetry is, I just sit down and I do that. I don't really think about it. I go on Twitter for the day and I find a hashtag and I kind of just write it. But that's a lot more comfortable for me to write. The romance, light erotica, that's more comfortable for me because, I'm a 43-year-old woman. I know what I like and, I write about it. So writing the young adult, which is why I'm still so surprised that, sometimes I'm doing this because it's not comfortable as an adult to write it.
Right.
Because you want to censor certain things as an adult, and I don't censor any of it. And later on in the book, I do touch on, things like race and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's not very comfortable as an adult. There's lines that, you're not supposed to cross, and I pretty much cross every line. So it's a little uncomfortable for me. But the poetry, that's easier for me to write. The romance, I always want a love story. I'm a sucker for love, and it's in everything I write. So there you go.
You're making Samantha swoon over here, by the way.
I love love.
I love love.
I love love. I think our at work we had a coworker who was getting married, and I think he got really tired of hearing that because every time I'd see him, I'd be like, "I love love."
Yes. Yes.
Good luck, though. Probably won't last, but it's, I love love.
Yeah,
Good luck
I
for
do
you.
too. I do too. I think it's important. You gotta love something.
Gotta love the romance,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Samantha's just making faces at me on this side of the conversation for the record. So
You gotta make it, you gotta make it relatable, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
I love emotion.
yeah.
I love emotion.
I think emotion's an interesting topic in writing too, because it's hard to write emotion without just saying, and today he was happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that just gets boring, and like, where do you go from here? So like, I feel like the emotion is hard to write sometimes. So do you have any tips on how you go about writing emotion?
Well, I'm actually very inspired by emotion. I don't feel emotion like a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
So I have emotion through everything that I write, especially with River and all that. It gets very, very emotional. I'm just fascinated by emotion. So I have certain music lists that I put on to put me in a certain frame of mind. And, sometimes when I need to be really emotional, there's a lot of scenes that's going to make you cry. So I will make myself cry. Thinking horrible things, obviously. As a writer, you sometimes do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only perfect if I'm like really, really crying and I have to walk away.
Yeah.
I love that. I love putting so much emotion in there that you're just going to hate me. I mean, you really are. You're going to be like, I can't believe you did that to me. Oh, my God. I want you to get into your ugly crying, and then you're not going to know if it's going to be a happy ever after.
Right.
So I love that. I love writing emotion. It is my favorite thing.
Oh my gosh, you should do a promo for your novel where when people read it, they take a picture of their ugly cry face and send it to you. That would be amazing.
Oh my God, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
That would be great. Yeah, go ahead. That would be amazing. I could, that would be one of the funniest promos I think I've seen for a book, and yet it would, like, make me really happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I read this book,
I
and this is
gotta
the
tell
ugly
Sophia
cry
that.
face it made me do.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, I'm going to tell Sophia that.
Yeah. You should. That'd be funny.
So you mentioned the kind of the playlist to get yourself in the right mindset. What about other emotions other than sadness, other than getting I'm not asking this question well at all. So
Are you trying to ask what type of music she listens
I'm trying to ask,
generate different types of emotional responses?
I was going to ask, that was part of it, and if there are any other techniques for other emotions that you would use. That's why I was trying to go with it.
Okay. So I have all my main characters, and they each have their own personal music list. And so I've trained myself that when I put that music list on, I'm automatically transferring into that person. I will listen to a song. Music is such a huge part of my life. I don't really watch TV. I get very bored and restless. You have to, like, make me watch a movie because, again, I'm very restless. It's boring. But music is always on in our house. I have Alexa, and she's always blasting something. So everybody has a different song that everyone has one song that's like their major song. And I've trained myself that as soon as I hear it, I'm that person. So, and it's all different. It could go from classical to, my favorite is metalcore.
Nice.
It's just everything. I have some Zeph in there. So, I mean, everybody has their own music list. And it also helps if it's cloudy. When it's too sunny for too long, I just can't do it. I can't get into it. I need to be dark and tragic and, depressing, and I can really get in there and get in my character's minds. But the music, that plays an enormous part in all the writing that I do. I'll actually I'll post each music list with each book when it comes out. But music is the one thing that just puts me right in that place. It doesn't matter. I could be out somewhere and accidentally hear the song, and I'm instantly that person, and I'll be on my phone in the corner, like writing down, trying to type stuff up on my phone.
Yeah.
And because I hear that song, but I've trained myself to do that. I don't know what else I do. Just, kind of put myself in that frame of mind. And the music is the one thing, though, man. You just hear that, and I instantly go there.
Yeah, I think that's a cool technique. I mean, I usually have music on when I write as well, though for me, I don't switch the playlist around. I kind of have the same playlist that gets me in the mood for the novel as a whole. So I kind of listen to the same thing, shuffle it up, change the position of the songs around. But I do the same thing, and I think it's an interesting tool because just by its nature, music makes you feel something.
Exactly.
This is a very interesting conversation to me because music plays a big part in my life as well, but for whatever reason, there are certain characters that I associate certain songs with, but for the most part, I associate songs with certain scenes, not with characters. So this is really, really fascinating to me to hear the other side of it. I mean, like there's one or two characters that have a certain song tied to them. Everything else, for me, music is that moment, not that person. So
Interesting.
This is really interesting to me. So
I have both. It's both. You know, there's this one classical piece that I use that as soon as I've been working with the scene for, 3 months now on one of the books. At the end of this book I'm actually working on right now. And I put the song on, and I have to write so much until it gets to a certain point. And then, you know, because I'm alone, nobody sees me, I can act out.
Oh, yeah.
I act out a bit of the part because I hear that music, and I almost got it to where it's perfect. But that one piece of music is like, I mean, the classical, it's the moment when I put that on, I've got to go to that scene. I've got to try to figure it out. It's going to be an extremely emotional, shocking scene. But, you know, the music, I don't, like I said, I don't feel emotion. So I have to go to the extremes to feel something.
Yeah.
So the music, the writing, the poetry, that's pretty much the only way I can feel.
Right.
So it's always extreme. I've always, you know, it's not really a coping mechanism. I don't know, is it? But I always go to the extreme of everything. Everything is always going to be extreme with me because I want to provoke a response. Like I said, I don't want you to read it and go, that's kind of cool. Next.
Yeah, right.
No. I don't want that at all. I want you sending me angry DMs. Well, don't send me DMs. Now, I have a strict rule about that. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When the book comes out, I want people's review to go, how could you do that? That is, what did you do?
Right,
I want that.
Right.
I don't want them to go, oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, no. It's not going to work for me.
When I was in college, and I would go on a writing binge or something, and my roommate would be around, and if I was trying to write something and it was an action, I'd ask her to help me. I'd be like, hey, I was like, can I borrow your arm for a second? And I'd try to if, you're holding hands or something, can you actually put your arm around someone's shoulder? I would use her all the time to try to figure out how to move around because it's hard to think it through because you're just so used to moving, your body just automatically does some things. And so when you're trying to write it, you're like, can you actually turn that way? Is that if I say that he's turning his upper body, can I actually do that? So I used to do that all the time, and I still do because when I write, I'm usually by myself as well, and so I'll get up and I'll be like, okay, yes, I can extend my leg in that direction. That works. So
So I have a question going back to the music.
Yeah.
Which way does it flow? Does the character lead to the song choice, or does the music inspire the character? Is it a mix of the two? How does that process look for you?
Well, I have a character, and then normally how it works is I have a character, and I make this character and do a lot of research, and then I will go through and start searching for a song. The only time that I didn't do that was for one of my bad guys. His name is Wicked, and there was this one song that I knew long before the series, and it was just every time I heard that song, I just kept thinking about him. And even though I hadn't read the book yet, I just kept having this guy in my head, and that's his song. He's the only one that I've ever really done that with. But normally I have the character first, and this is what I need to look for. I'm looking for something a little different. Because I do have a lot of characters, it's kind of hard to find new music that would be individual to that person. The story all happens in 1 year time frame, so it all kind of overlaps. But Normally I have the character first. Not always, but normally.
Gotcha. For me, I think that one of the things that happens is, again, this is just a fascinating conversation to me because my process is usually, with characters, the same thing happens to me, but with scenes, the opposite happens. I will hear a song and it'll be like, oh, I could picture this happening to that. Oh, I need to write this in response to that. So this is just a really interesting conversation for me. So,
Music is everything. And music is so, I just can't even tell you what music does for me. And, music with my kids is huge. I know a lot of parents, my son does the wrestling and stuff, and you're around a lot of the parents and a lot of their kids, and just, volunteering when they were in school, in middle school and stuff. I actually did the PTA one year. I will never do that ever again. That was the worst year of my life. So, being around other kids and talking with parents, and I'm always surprised by parents that don't let their kids listen to certain types of music. And again, because music is such a lifeline for me, I don't tell my kids they can't listen to anything. And, a lot of music is violent and dirty and, talks really trashy. But I remember being 17 and my parents let me listen to whatever I wanted to.
Yeah.
So it really kind of opened up my music taste. So whenever I come across a parent, they're like, "Oh no, we don't do that. They can't listen to trap. That's just, it's very violent, says bad things about women and stuff like that." And I'm like, oh. And me and my son were listening to 6 9 on the way into the tournament. So we're sitting there listening to all the stuff that they say they can't listen to. I just don't get that. I don't get why parents put these sort of restrictions on their kids when they're going to listen to the music anyways.
Yeah.
Right. They're just not going to do it around you.
Yeah.
Music is a huge part of our lives. And I'll be out somewhere and I'll hear a song. And the frustrating part is not knowing what the song is. So I have Shazam on my phone, right? The app where you can listen to it. But sometimes it's not loud enough, and I get really frustrated. So then you're spending the afternoon, they said this, and trying to find the stupid song.
Yeah,
you're crazy.
You're standing in the middle of a grocery aisle, like typing the lyrics into your phone, going, "Is this what I'm hearing?"
Exactly.
It happens to me at the gym all the time. Because, I'm working out. I can't just bust out the phone and figure it. I'm like, what is this song? I like this song. So.
Yep. Music is everything. Love music.
Yeah. I'm not trying to turn this into a whole parenting conversation, but
Go for it.
Talking as the guy who, much to my wife's chagrin, taught his kids a bunch of the lyrics to DMX, X Gonna Give It To You. I think it's a matter of, exposing your kids to things the right way so
Agreed.
that they, I have played songs for my kids. There is a thrash ska band that I listen to. Yes, thrash ska called Voodoo Glow Skulls.
That's awesome.
Letting my kids, they have a song called El Cucuy that's all about like the Latino version of the boogeyman.
Yeah.
So exposing kids to that and then having conversations about what it means so that they can understand and it's not so scary and shocking and whatever else to them, is...
Well, I think it creates a bridge where they feel comfortable asking too, because if you're listening to it with them and they have a question, they might not ask you right then, but they may ask you something later that you go, oh, you've been thinking about this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But you are experiencing it together.
I don't understand parents that, and again, I know this, I don't know what this says about my maturity, but I relate better to teenagers than I do adults, because the teenagers are going to be blunt.
Oh, yeah.
They already think they can go out and conquer the world. They think they can do that. When an adult knows you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I just am curious why you wouldn't let your child listen to music, to a certain kind of music, but then you'll go out and buy them the new video game and let them sit there for hours and game.
So
it's the same
true.
thing.
Yeah,
I don't understand parents that do that.
Oh, it's so true.
I
Yeah.
really don't.
Well, you don't understand because it doesn't make sense. So...
But again, when my kids were younger, my youngest is going to be 17 this week, so it's not like I have little kids anymore. When they were in elementary school and middle school, no, I still listen to mad music, though. Never mind. But I still listen to really heavy stuff. But, you know, you have the conversations with your kid.
Right.
This isn't real. You can't really do this.
Exactly.
Make believe in, if you tell them what they're supposed to know, then I think it's just common sense.
Yeah.
I mean, my son knows he can't really talk to women like that. He knows he can't really do that stuff.
Right.
It's just really cool music.
Yeah.
I'm not the best parent, though. You probably couldn't take advice from me.
It's cool. I'm a fantastic dad, so take advice from me, and I agree with her. So,
being a parent is hard.
it is.
It's hard.
It is. I mean,
it's impossible.
mine are much younger than yours, so I know that I'm going to have significant challenges ahead of me. Let's put it that way. But, I mean, I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and it's hard now. I mean, I can't even imagine when they're teenagers. It's hard now.
Yeah, you know, I have 2 daughters. They're both 19. My middle girl is adopted. And my oldest daughter, Samantha, was an absolute nightmare. No offense, Samantha, if you ever hear this. But, I mean, she was a handful.
Yeah.
And she just totally numbed me to everything. So by the time we got to my son, he's so laid back, and nothing really, you know, affects him.
Mm-hmm.
And so my parenting with him is really relaxed compared to what it was with her.
Right.
But yet her hitting 7th grade was the worst year. I find it's the worst year for everybody. 7th grade, I mean, it was awful. And then she hit high school, and she suddenly thought that, you know, I always say she thought she was a bad girl from Bad Girls Club. And she was not. But overnight, she just thought that she was it. And, you know, the battles, that's kind of why, you know, the story kind of grew the way it did, because she just, I mean, if I said the sky was blue, it was not. It doesn't matter. What I swear to God, she would just say, nope, it's not. Sorry. Parenting is so difficult.
I've read some of your posts on your blog, and I know that you talk about some of the same things on there. So it's interesting to hear it verbally as well.
You know, I never wanted kids. I really didn't. I always, you know, I loved Elizabeth Taylor growing up. And, you know, she was married, like 7, 8 times. And I always told my parents, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get married. And each time I get married, I'm going to have a bigger ring each time. Because back then I just got jewelry and stuff. And so I find it funny that, you know, I've been with my warrior for 20 years now. And I had 3 kids, and I didn't even want kids. And, you know, I don't think we've messed them up too bad. I mean, a little therapy's okay, I think. You know, it's not too bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's funny.
So we have 3 questions.
We do.
That we ask all of our guests.
Every single one.
Every single one.
Every single one.
Every single one. So if you are ready, Ryen, we are going to move on to our 3 questions.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Take it
So,
away.
question number 1, and I feel like we already know the answer to this, and I feel like it's going to make me sad. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I would normally say I'm a pantser because everything just kind of, I feel like sometimes I write backwards. Like, you know, I write the big scenes, and then I go in and add all this stuff and think, oh, no, this has got to happen. But as the series grew, I was forced to become a plotter because I had to know what was going to happen. I mean, I know the last line of the very last book, and I know I've got to
Preach,
do like
sister.
No.
Preach, sister.
Oh, no.
I do as well. Preach.
Oh.
But I know I've got like 12 major things to get there. I just don't know how I'm going to do it yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how it's got to end. And again, I know my last line, but how I get there, that's, you know, I'm still kind of working that out. So I'd say I'm mostly a pantser. Mostly.
I appreciate that.
I don't. But...
I know. It's okay, though. I think the pantsers are winning, by the way. Of our guest tally, the Pantsers are winning.
There might
and
be
I
more.
feel really good about that.
There might be more of you, but can you really say you're winning?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, because
I feel like sometimes if I write down like, you know, A, B, and C, like the outline, this has to happen. The writing doesn't flow. It doesn't, you know, it's too contrived, and I feel like pressure. So I'll just sit and write, and then it kind of writes itself sometimes, because I'll even be surprised, like, wait, no, we can't do that. How are we supposed to do this? So I always feel like if I put restrictions on myself, the writing is not as good. So the plotting is really kind of hard.
I agree.
Knife in my heart, but whatever.
Question number 2. I feel like a game show host.
Yeah.
This is pretty awesome.
Dun, 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 dun.
Where do you get your best ideas? We have our best ideas come to us in the car.
In the shower.
In the shower.
Yeah.
I had one in the car the other day, and it really made me angry because I could not write it down.
The one that makes me angry is when I'm falling asleep.
Yeah. Oh, that one's, yeah, that's unfortunate.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but where do you get your best ideas?
Well, I like to hike a lot, and so I will go to my park and put the music on and kind of just let my mind go, and it's the music. It's the music. Whatever, I got to listen to music, and then it'll just happen, just mostly when I'm hiking, or it's like I'm fixing to fall asleep, and I'm so tired, and so I'm like picking up my phone, and I'm just making keywords, typing keywords in it. Of course, I don't get it the next day. I totally lost. I was just mad at myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely been there. Or you think you're laying there and you're like, okay, if I just repeat this to myself 10 times, I'll totally remember it tomorrow. And then you wake up and you're like, wait, what was that thing?
Yes.
What was that
Yes,
thing?
I've done that. Yes. I can do this. Just think about it. Don't forget it. Don't forget it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh, there it went.
Well, the falling
Totally
asleep.
gone.
The falling asleep one, since you mentioned it, Samantha, again, is that is the worst one, because then I have the battle of, do I try to remember it? Do I repeat it 10 times? Do I force myself to get up and write it down or type it on my phone, at which point I'm awake.
Yeah.
I'm not getting back to sleep if I do that.
Nope, not that point. Nope. For me, the day of the week comes into play on that too, because I'm like, if I'm like laying there and it's like a Monday night and I'm like, oh, well, I gotta get up and go to work tomorrow morning, and it's already, I've already stayed up a little later than I normally do. Do I get up and then just blow the night and be like, well, stumble into work the next morning and be like, it was one of those nights.
Oh, another bender, Samantha.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
She's got a drinking problem. She likes to drink. That's what she's doing. You're like, no, I was writing.
Yeah, I totally was writing. It's totally why I'm slurred and stumbly. Don't even worry about it.
And our last question. What do you want to plug?
Well, I would love to plug Kyanite. I love those people. I love Ryan and Sophia and Sam. They really have made something incredible. And I had been getting a lot of rejections back. I'm not going to tell you how many, quite a lot, hundreds. But and they formed Kyanite, and he told him about it. And I still kind of hesitated because I like him, a lot, and you don't, if you have like a friend line, and then do I do this? But I'm really good friends with them, so I kind of battled with that. But I'm really proud of them and what they've done, and what they're doing for me. So Kyanite, definitely. I mean, Twitter is the place to find people. I'm telling you what, Twitter, if you're a writer, you'd be on Twitter. They have all the different contests, and you should definitely be around other writers, because they're the only ones that are going to understand. I'm sitting here and nothing's happening. I have writer's block. What am I supposed to do? Or procrastination. Or look at these cats. I mean, they're the only ones that are going to understand where you're coming from. So you should always be around writers. And then Kratos, I know you guys love him. I love him. He, sometimes when I'm, being really bratty and just nothing's working and I'm so negative and it's just, I hate this, I hate writing, he comes in and just smacks me upside the head and stop that. So he really pulls me back from the ledge a lot. And then Phoebe Yawson, I don't know if you guys know her. She wrote She Cried Wolf. It's a really cool book, coming of age, about a girl who, has these powers that kind of are, come out. And, I really like her as a person. She's a great mama. I really like to, more people need to know about her and get her book. She's great. And then Stephen Neddo. I know I'm saying that wrong. He wrote The Soul Web. I don't know if you guys follow him on Twitter, but really fascinating book. And he's just a really great guy. Just love him. So I definitely want to plug those guys.
Okay, cool.
Follow them. Great writers all around.
Very cool. All right, outlets, that will do it for another episode of Shameless Plugs. Major thanks to our guest, Ryen Lesli. Again, all of the links will be up on our site and on YouTube and everything else. So Hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Thank you again, Ryen.
Thank you. Had fun.
Good.
Yay!
All right. That'll do it for another episode. We will see you next time, Outlets.
Bye!